So I just spent 36 hours in New York with the Nikon 14-24 2.8Z, and this lens is an almost perfect ultra-wide angle. And today's video is sponsored by Professional Photographers of America. Join the community of 35,000 photographers and find equipment, insurance, and business tools for photographers just like you and me. What's up, y'all? So good morning from New York. Now, for this video to make a little bit of sense and for all the photos you're about to see to have some context, I briefly want to break down why I'm here in the first place and what the objective is for this New York trip. I actually came here for a project that I can't quite talk about yet. Yesterday we had this really cool demo at BH. Essentially it's for some tech that's really useful for photographers, for editors. I'll be able to talk about it probably in like a month or so. So here's the thing, a lot of people might get flown out to New York and just treat it like a vacation, but I wanted to make the absolute most out of this 36 hours and put in work on the main project I'm focused on right now, which is my daily photo project at Evan Ramp Photo on Instagram. My goal with that project is to share one photo I love every single day and hopefully have that turn into a new body of work, which can be a book or a zine. What better place to work on something like that than New York, where inspiration and photos are literally all around you. Now here's the thing, realistically 36 hours is not a very long time to be in any place and do photography, especially if you're like me and you're a very slow starter. It usually takes me like half a day to even get in the groove and start making pictures that I like. So to make this easier for me, I only brought one camera and one lens, the Nikon Z8 and the Nikon 14-24mm 2.8Z. This is the new version of my favorite lens from Nikon previously, which was the original 14-24. It's what I built my career on. It's changed my life in a lot of ways. So I'm excited to be back with the new version and using this trip as basically a test run. And a little bit of a spoiler alert here, but this 14-24Z is definitely my new favorite Nikon lens. So let me pack up this hotel room, let me get back to Atlanta, get back in the studio. I'll show you all the photos, give you some of the behind the scenes, and we can talk about why this is my new favorite. Smell that? That is the smell of the greatest city on earth. All right, we are back in the studio and we can talk about why this 14-24 2.8Z from Nikon is the closest we're gonna get to a perfect ultra wide angle lens. Now, I say the closest because there are some things that still make this an imperfect lens and it's not gonna be great for everyone. We'll talk about that closer to the end of the video. But for me, I'm absolutely loving this thing. This trip to New York validated every thought that I had about this lens beforehand, and this lens is the main reason why I actually switched back to Nikon. It's a huge piece of my creative process, both for photography as well as these YouTube videos. And that's kind of the point of this video, to talk about why this is such an important piece of equipment for me and why it could be for you. Now, one quick housekeeping note, my apologies if the audio on that intro sequence wasn't the greatest. With me trying out this new gear and learning new techniques, I was trying something different with my microphone for the vlog-ish segment of this video, and the background noise was a little bit of an issue, so my apologies. Bear with me as I learn that and dial it in a little bit more. Now, let's get into the reason why this lens is so special to me and why I think it's perfect for probably like 95% of people out there. The most important factor of this lens making it so special is the fact that it easily takes a filter. Now, I say easily because you can just screw a filter onto this lens like any other filter out there. And the way you do this is by attaching this essentially lens hood that has a filter thread built into it. Now, the filter for this lens is a 112mm filter, which is absolutely massive and can get a little bit expensive depending on what the filter is. Now, for me, I picked up a ProMist filter in New York for about $70 and it works completely fine. So that's not too far out of the ordinary, but I also picked up the Nikon polarizer for this lens, and that was extremely expensive. It was a $500 polarizer, and it really hurt my pockets to get that, but I knew it was going to be necessary for the photos that I was making on this trip, and it proved to be worth it because a lot of the images have some glare removed, and I think it added to the overall feel of the shots. Now, in previous ultra-wide lenses that go to 14mm like this, you typically have this insane, like, bulbous front element to the lens. This is the old 14-24 from Nikon, and this lens, it's almost impossible to put a filter on. You had to buy a secondary kit. You usually had to use square filters that slid into the lens. So using a filter like a polarizer when you're just walking around, say, New York or a city, felt somewhat impossible. I mean, you could do it, but it was just a massive inconvenience to the point where I just dealt with this lens never taking a filter and didn't worry about it. But the fact that this new version does take a filter and takes one so easily is, in my opinion, what makes it so special compared to any other 14mm lens out there, especially one that has a 2.8 aperture. And another benefit of the 2.8 aperture is obvious. That's handheld low light. When I was in New York and I was doing all these images in the subway, there was never even a thought in my mind about being able to capture an effective image because I knew I could let enough light into my lens. And on top of that, the fact that this lens is a functional zoom lens and can punch into 24mm gives you a lot of versatility. You don't always have to feel stuck in that ultra wide POV style that you get at 14mm. And personally, I love that about this lens. You can technically create some type of street photography-esque photos or more traditional feeling photos at 24mm, all in the same lens. And for me personally, that versatility of being able to go from ultra wide to the more traditional 24mm focal length and still keep a 2.8 aperture is what makes this feel like the perfect ultra wide for me. In the past, I've used a Sigma 14mm 1.4 aperture fixed lens. It's an amazing ultra wide, but it's so big, it's bigger than this lens, and you're confined to that 14mm look, which at times, if you know that's what you want to get, is great. But when it comes to just walking around a city and wanting to have different options with you, being stuck at 14mm is not always ideal. So being able to go from 14mm to 24 is huge for me. Now, throughout this video, you've seen behind the scenes footage, you've seen example photos, and it should be pretty obvious that this lens has stellar image quality and handles long exposure and night photography extremely well. For a lens that's $2,500, that would be expected, and it should be completely obvious based on the proof in this video, so I don't want to talk about that too much. The image quality is stellar, as you would expect, and it performs exactly like a pro lens should perform. Now, I do want to talk about the slight shortcomings with this lens and why it's not exactly perfect for everyone, but before I do that, I want to thank today's sponsor, PPA, also known as Professional Photographers of America. So when it comes to investing money into expensive camera gear, I think most photographers have the same fear, which is the fear of that equipment breaking and them being out of pocket to replace it. I know this has happened to me before. I dropped a lens on a shoot a couple years back, and it was honestly really devastating for me at the time because I had no way to replace it. Now, as a member of PPA, I have up to $15,000 of gear insurance at a low monthly price. PPA also has full gear replacement options at a flat $350 deductible, so now when I go out to travel for videos like this one, I have peace of mind knowing that if the worst happens to my camera equipment when I'm out shooting or when I'm traveling and it's in my bag, I am covered. And on top of that, PPA has things like data recovery services if your hard drive ever crashes, and they have model release forms, cancellation letters, and a bunch of different business resources that you can download. So check it out for yourself with a link in the description down below. PPA is hooking up the channel with a special offer. You can save on your membership, you can support the channel at the same time, and most importantly, you can have your gear protected if the worst happens to it. So whether you're just starting out or you're looking to take your business to the next level, PPA, also known as Professional Photographers of America, is where you need to be. Now, with all that being said, there is one scenario where I can't recommend this lens, and that is any scenario where, one, you're trying to blend into your surroundings and not be seen. This lens is the exact opposite of that. It looks like a pro serious camera lens, and if you're someone who wants something a little more compact or maneuverable or lighter for travel, this is probably not going to be your best bet, especially if you're putting a filter on here. Now, when you take this filter thread off, the lens is much smaller. You can put a more traditional lens cap on here, and it's not the biggest lens in the world, but it's still not small and compact, and for the sake of this video, calling this the almost perfect ultra wide lens, I have to bring that up because that is the thing that makes this not so perfect for a select group of people. Now, as for this trip to New York and testing out this lens, I am blown away with the results. I created some amazing images on this trip, and there's some really unique images in here as well. There's this one selfie of me with this mirror that I found where the Brooklyn Bridge and the New York skyline is in the shot. That is just such a unique and cool looking image, and it was made possible with the 14mm focal length on this lens. Now, my favorite photo on the entire trip though was this composition that I happened to find when I was out in Manhattan near the, I can't remember the name of the building, I think it's called the Oculus, but when I walked past it, I noticed this stairwell that was lit up with these lights, and with the 14mm focal length on this lens, I was able to create an image that I've never really seen before or thought of myself in all the times that I've been to New York. This image felt really unique to me, and that's what makes it my favorite on the trip. I'm going to go ahead and rank this one a 4.4 out of 5. And if you want to replicate the editing style on that photo, it's a very simple formula from my presets. You're going to use preset 57 and basic adjustments 14. That is all I did on that image. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, my presets are not these one-size-fits-all presets. I created a formulaic system that allows me to give you exact breakdowns of how edits are made here on YouTube as well as on my social media. So if you saw photos throughout this video that you like, head over to Evan Ram Photo. You can look for that particular image and you can get a breakdown of how exactly that image was made using my presets. With all that being said, I'm really enjoying this lens so far. I'm enjoying the creative capabilities it gives me, and I'm excited to continue to use it in the future. One of the big things that I'm really excited about is being able to incorporate more of the vlog style elements that I talked about wanting to incorporate in the last video and sort of incorporated into this video into more videos going forward, because I now have this lens at my disposal and have the ability to do something that I haven't really been able to do for a long time. Something about this lens just feels really great for both photography as well as general content creation, and for me it makes a whole lot of sense, and that's why it's pretty much the perfect ultra wide lens for me, and it's one of the best Nikon lenses I've ever bought. So if there's another lens out there that you think I should try from Nikon, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you are not yet, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. And big thank you to PPA once again for sponsoring today's video.